I'm sure you're very excited about this next video and what I might teach you. Today we are talking about adding integers. So we've already started talking about the number line, and we've applied that to the coordinate plane, which is just really two number lines. So the point of talking about the number line is really to look at all integers. A lot of primary school, you just look at half the integers, and now you're going to start looking at all the integers and learn how to calculate with them. So that's essentially what we're doing today. So you can title this, Adding Integers. And you should write whatever date it is. Are you writing this? You should be writing this. All right, and put your date, adding integers. Okay, so we're going to start out with that number line again, so I can give you some vocab. We'll just put 0 in the middle, and we'll go to 4 positive integers, and we'll go to 4 negative integers. And that should be, I think, enough to show you what I want to show you today. Okay, so we've talked about this already, but when you go to the right, you should notice that the integers get bigger, and they're more and more positive. There's more positive quantities. So this direction is larger and positive. So then what is the left? I hope you said negative. And smaller. Negative and smaller to the left. How about 0? Is 0 positive or negative? No, it's neither. Neither. Okay? 0 is sort of the neutral friend in the middle that doesn't bother getting into conflict with positive or negative. Okay, so if I look at the number 4 and negative 4, when I add 4 and negative 4 together, what do you think I'm going to get? 0, right? They cancel each other out. Those quantities are what we call opposites. So that's an important word for today. Make sure you have that down your paper. 4 and negative 4 are opposites. So what's the opposite of negative 5 then? 5. What's the opposite of negative 3? 3. What's the opposite of 215? Negative 215. So it's just its counterpart that's either positive or negative. All right, so now that we're looking at both the positive and negative whole numbers, we can use the word integers. So write down integers, and we're going to define it together. We briefly talked about this a couple classes ago, but it's this set of whole numbers. A set of whole numbers that is positive. Actually, we'll say the set of whole numbers, set of whole numbers and their opposites, because that implies the negative numbers then. So you've learned a ton about whole numbers. That's what you worked with in primary school a lot. So that's everything that's positive that we've been dealing with for a long time. But you've only talked about half the total integers, because every whole number has an opposite that's negative. So now we're going to start talking about negative and positive interchangeably. Another good term to know for today is called absolute value. So let's write that down, absolute value. And I'm going to use that several times in the lesson, so please do record this. The absolute value is the distance a number is from 0. The distance a number is from 0. So how far is 4 from 0? Well, 4. How far is negative 4 from 0? Well, that's 4 as well. So negative 4 and 4 have the same absolute value. Okay? How far away is 10 from 0? 10. How far away is negative 10 from 0? Well, that's 10 as well. So the absolute value is always a positive quantity because it's a distance, right? So it's a distance from 0. Okay? So we're going to be using that as well. So when do we use integers? And what types of situations do we need to talk about both negative and positive numbers? In life and math, when do we talk about and use negative and positive numbers? Maybe think about that for a minute. I think of several examples. One is temperature, right? If something's below 0, it's quite cold, and we start using negative numbers. It's negative 5, it's negative 10. So we start using negative numbers when we talk about temperature. We also use negative numbers when we talk about position up or down. So if you climb a mountain, right, you are 10,000 feet, you are 200 meters above sea level. Or if you're diving underwater, if anybody has ever tried scuba diving, You're going below the sea level, so we might say you went down -10 meters below the sea level. So you could even talk about an elevator, that type of thing. When you're talking about position up or down, we often use positive and negative numbers. And then as you get older in life, you don't want to talk about negative numbers too much when it comes to your finances. Because negative numbers in finances, for example, in your bank account or when you owe money to a bank or another company, implies that you're in debt, that you owe something. Negative numbers would be owing, and positive numbers would be money that you have. So money, temperature, going up and down, those are all situations where we talk about adding integers, and you'll see those situations a lot in your word problems. Okay, so let's talk about how to do it, because adding integers is the topic, and adding is easy, right? Adding's super easy. So I think this should make sense to you today, except there are a few catches. I'm going to erase this so that you can still see what I'm working on. All right, so let's try, for example, -2 plus -1. Okay, so we'll try this example first. I'm keeping it really small so that I can use my number line. All right, you'll see why. First of all, why do I have parentheses? Any guesses as to why I put parentheses around my numbers? And why didn't I just leave it like this? Why didn't I just leave it like that? Why did I put parentheses around my numbers? It's an important thing to note because this can be confusing the first time you start looking at it. But the reason that we use the parentheses is so that we don't get confused with the positive and the negative signs. We get that this means a -1 instead of subtracting, that type of thing, with anything that might be ahead. So it's nice to group it like that so it doesn't end up looking like positive, minus, positive, that type of thing. It'll get a little confusing. So mathematicians at this level, they start to group things together and put parentheses to make things more clear. So don't be afraid of parentheses. See if you can figure out what they're trying to group together. Okay, -2 plus -1. All right, if you look at your number line, this is really easy to think about, I think. If you're going to go to -2, well, that's right here is -2, right? So you're at -2, and now you want to add another -1. Well, all you have to do is go one more. Right? Here's another -1. So what are you at then? I hope you notice that you are at -3. Okay, that's all well and good. That's all well and good. Why don't you try really quickly adding -14 plus -7. So you can use a number line that's on your paper. It doesn't go that far. You could draw some extra numbers, or you can think about it, imagine the number line in your head, and see what kind of answer you would get for that. Pause here and do that. I hope you got -21. Okay, fantastic. But in some situations, it's not going to be quite so easy. For example, what if both the numbers are not negative? What if we have -4 plus 5? Okay, write that down. I guess I don't really need the parentheses if it's a positive number. There you go. Okay, write that down on your paper, please, and think about that. Okay, what would the answer be then? Well, using the number line, you see that -4 is all the way down here. And now you need to add a +5. So going in the opposite direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it puts me at 1. So the answer to this is actually 1. I hope that makes sense to you, because if you think about it, -4 plus 4 is 0, right? They cancel each other out. Well, if you're adding 5 then, it's 1 more than 4. So that'll give you 1. Okay? So that's kind of the way to think about it. Let's try this on your own. Try, instead of -14, try 14 plus -7. Try 14 plus -7. Pause here and do that. I hope you got that 14 plus -7 would give me 7. Okay? So there's ways to think through this, and especially using the number line can be very useful. However, you're not always going to use a number line because the numbers won't be small enough. So there's many situations where you're dealing with larger numbers and you want to be able to find the answer quickly, and you don't want to have to draw out a number line, count with your fingers, or think through it. You want to have some rules. So we're going to give you a couple of rules today that you can apply when you're doing your classwork and your homework. So the rules go like this. So write rules and give it a subheading. If they have the same sign. If the two numbers you're adding have the same sign, that is, they're both positive or they're both negative, right? So if they have the same sign, like when we added -2 plus -1, it's quite simple, all right? You basically just add their values, add their absolute values, and keep the sign that they currently have. So let's write that down. We're going to add their absolute values and keep the sign. So for example, 14 plus 15 is what? What's 14 plus 15? 29. Okay? And then you have -4 plus -5. -4 plus -5. Just add their absolute value. What's the absolute value of -4? 4. That's how far it is from 0. What's the absolute value of -5? 5. That's how far it is from 0. So it's easy. 4 plus 5 is 9. Now it says keep the sign. They're both negative, so it'll be -9. Okay, so I think that makes sense. It's when we get into trouble is when they have different signs. So if they have different signs, the rules change. Okay? If they have different signs, we actually need to sort of ignore the signs for a second. So we need to initially start out by ignoring the sign. Ignore sign. So let's do an example as we're writing the rules. So in my example, let me try and give you a little bit more room here to see. I am going to take 3 plus -8. So the first thing I want to do is ignore the sign. Okay? I just want to look at the numbers 3 and 8. Okay? And after I've ignored the sign, I'm going to subtract the smaller from the bigger. Or the smaller from the larger number. So, what is the larger number here? 8. The absolute value, right? 3 is smaller, so I'm going to take 8 minus 3. Okay? So that's what I'm going to think. I'm going to think 8 minus 3. What is 8 minus 3? I hope you got 5. Okay, so we subtract the smaller from the bigger. Now, we want to keep the sign of the bigger absolute value. So keep the sign of the larger absolute value. Keep the sign of the larger absolute value. So what has the larger absolute value, -8 or 3? What has the greater distance from 0? I hope you said -8. So -8 wins, and since -8 is negative, our answer is negative as well. So you put these things together, find their difference is 5. What is the bigger absolute value? Negative sign. -5 is our final answer. Okay? I would like you to try this on your paper. 103 plus -200. Pause this and try that, please. 103 plus -200. All right, I hope you thought, what's the difference between their absolute values? So 200 minus 103. What's their difference? You should have gotten 97. And then which of the two numbers has the biggest absolute value? Well, that would be 200. And since 200 is negative, so is my answer. Okay? So using the number line is a great way. But these rules are going to help you understand this at a deeper level. Okay?